Okay, it's now 7 p.m. in Eastern time zone, so I'm going to go ahead and get this meeting started. My name is Jess Mears, and thank you everyone for joining us for an Elected Libertarians Roundtable. Tonight we're going to be speaking with 6 different elected libertarians from all different parts of the country. We're going to be talking about winning strategies to get elected and solutions that these candidates have implemented since they've been serving in public office. Did you know that there are currently 177 libertarians currently elected to public office? The Libertarian Party's goal is to increase this number exponentially to give power back to the people at the local, state, and federal levels. This webinar is going to last 1 hour. If you would like to ask one of our elected libertarians a question, please put it in the chat and I will do my best to get through as many questions as we possibly can. Please make sure to ask your questions while the candidate is speaking so we can have them up on the screen one time and then they will be dismissed. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, it is being live streamed. You are welcome to put questions in the Facebook Live, but the questions that come from our Zoom participants will be prioritized. So I wanted to let you know a little bit of information about the Libertarian Party before we bring on the candidate. The Libertarian Party is America's fastest growing political party. Voter registration is up 92% in the past 10 years. And in 2016, our presidential candidate broke records, receiving 4.5 million votes. And in 2020, we are aiming to have our presidential nominee on all 50 states plus DC for the ballot, just like we did in 2016. So why is it so important to support the Libertarian Party as a member? Well, tonight you're going to be hearing from people who are elected to public office as libertarians. And I mentioned before, our goal is to grow this number. With your support as a dues-paying member of the Libertarian Party, we can do more work to help candidates. There's currently 177 individuals elected as libertarians to public office. 56 of them are in partisan offices and 121 are in nonpartisan offices. Another reason why it's important to become a member of the Libertarian Party is to help expand your state party's delegation for our 2020 National Convention. In 2020, we're going to be in Austin, Texas for our National Convention Memorial Day weekend, May 21st through the 25th. And we're going to have there our presidential nomination as well as a number of other things. If you'd like your state to have more delegate seats, to have a larger voice in nominating our 2020 presidential ticket, it's very important that you and others in your state become dues-paying members of the Libertarian Party National. You'll also receive the LP News. It's our mail newspaper. And if you join the Libertarian Party at this link, you'll also get a free gift with your membership, lp.org/join-the-LP. So our first elected libertarian that we're going to have with us this evening is Cara Schulz. Cara works with the National Libertarian Party as our candidate recruiting specialist, so she pulls double duty between being an elected libertarian as well as a Libertarian Party staff member. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Cara.
Hi.
Hi, Cara. Let's see. Let's get your screen. Okay. All right. If you can start your video. All right, wonderful. Cara, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you please tell everyone that's watching, how did you get elected to public office and what have you been able to do since you've been an elected libertarian?
Sure. Okay. So I first ran for a city council seat in the 2014 election. I was running up against an incumbent. There were 8 other people running. It was a jungle primary. Which is not an unusual situation for a city council seat. It is at large, so it was over the entire city of 63,000 people. I came very close to unseating an incumbent, but I did not make it. But it was just separated by a couple hundred votes. So what I did was I took careful notes all through my campaign of what worked, what didn't work, what I wish I had done more of or started earlier, or what I wasted time or money on. I kept really meticulous notes because I knew coming that close, I was going to run in 2016. And many candidates do have to run twice for an office before they're elected to it. So that was just a plan when I initially ran. I suspected it was going to take 2 runs, and it did. So when 2016 rolled around, I had my campaign plan. And I had my run in 2014 to kind of shake everything out and know what I needed to do. So I knew my numbers. I knew the time commitment involved because it's like 22,000 doors that you have to knock to get through and win the election. So I had all of the background information. I knew what my budget should have been, which it needed to be higher. So I knew I needed to do more fundraising. But I also knew I needed to focus on 2 areas of my campaign: personalization and connecting to voters. And anything that was outside of that needed to go by the wayside. So by personalization, I mean, I had to connect with people as individuals. I had to find out what was on their mind and make my campaign very personalized to each individual I came into contact with. I also had to personalize it in bringing more of my personality into the campaign. People vote for people that they like. And I had to find a way for people to get to know me in a very short period of time, usually 30 seconds to 1 minute at their door, and make that connection to me as a human being, one human being to another human being. So I revamped my door knocking strategy. And when I knocked, it wasn't me talking to them. My goal was, how do I have a conversation? How do I have a dialogue? And how do I find out what they care about? Because I could run on issues I care about, and I did, but I wanted to focus more on issues that the residents cared about. So I had to find out what that was. So my door knocking strategy did change. And when I knocked, I introduced myself and why I was there, but then I went right into a question for them and asked them, you know, what was their major concern in our city? And then I waited for their answer, and I took careful notes at each door. And when I got home, I wrote a handwritten thank you note to every single person I would talk to that day, thanking them for taking the time to talk to me, because they didn't have to. You know, there they are at home having dinner, and they aren't sitting there going, God, you know, I sure wish some candidate would knock on my door tonight. No one is saying that or thinking that. So I wanted to be respectful and thank them for their time, and also thank them for sharing their concern about X. And I wrote in what their concern was, and then asked them to support me in the election. So every night I spent a couple hours writing those thank you notes out and sending them out. And I got thank you notes for my thank you notes. I had people contact me after they received my thank you note and then say, hey, I would like to put your yard sign in my yard. Is that okay? So this was a way to connect and be respectful with one another and to personalize. Other ways that I personalized my campaign was on my campaign material. One of the things I really love is food, very into food. So I put recipes on my campaign material. Not only did that make it something someone was more likely to keep, it was also a way that we could connect over those recipes, because people did try them and they contacted me and said whether they liked them or not. And other people sent me their recipes saying, this is a really good recipe if you want to put this on your next piece of campaign lit. And I had different recipes. And so I started to get contacted by residents saying, I got this campaign piece from you, but I heard you have this recipe on another piece. Could I get that? So that was another way to personalize it, to bring my personality into the campaign, to let them know who I am. The other way I did that is I'm crazy about my cat. And anyone who knows me knows I'm crazy about my cat. So my campaign t-shirts had my cat on there, and it would say, Mabel says vote for Cara. And then I also created little cards, and it was right when Pokemon Go came out, and so it was like mimicking a Pokemon Go card, and it had my cat on there as one of the Pokemon type characters. So that was ways that I brought that personalization in a way to connect in. Things that I've been able to accomplish once I was elected to office, you know, it's ranged from really small things, such as eliminating licensing requirements and payment for pets, all the way to much larger things like completely eliminating building height in most of our cities. So you can build however high you wish. Eliminating things in our code that has to do with aesthetics rather than safety. We're looking at preparing a 2-year review of every single code line by line and going through that and looking at what we can eliminate. You know, we're also looking at tackling how we do code enforcement. Right now our city does proactive code enforcement, which means just in this first half of the year, over 900 people have received violation notices. So how do we lessen that? Because that's not something I think that the city should be seeking out and doing. But some of the other things that I've been able to accomplish while in office is affect the conversation during city council. You don't just vote, you get to say why you're voting a specific way and give your reason behind it. That is some of the most powerful time that you have while you're in elected office. And ours are live streamed and they are watched. And so that gets a lot of attention. But the other thing that I've been able to do is help other libertarians get elected. I helped another libertarian in my city get elected onto city council, so now there's 2 of us. And now, us working together with our other city councilors, we were able to get another libertarian onto our economic development board. So if you do get elected, I will tell you this is my biggest piece of advice for you. Make friends with your staff, your fellow electeds, your city councilors. Earn their respect and earn their trust, because in order to do anything, they have to cooperate with you. And we say we're into voluntary, mutually beneficial relationships. So be a good partner in that voluntary, mutually beneficial relationship and use persuasion, and you can get quite a bit done. Thank you.
Okay, Cara, I have one question that came in. So here is a question, and I'm not sure if this applies to your elected council seat, so if it doesn't, we'll just go ahead and move on. What can be done about more police transparency and accountability? This individual lives in California and said that California took a big step in demanding public records be released in regards to issues related to police and law enforcement. They believe that addressing this with an anti-stance against cops in general will shore a lot of support. Do you have any opinions or experience with transparency and accountability in your local government, especially related to law enforcement?
Sure. So in our city, we have body cameras on all of our police, and we were the first city in our state to do that. So we have a tradition of that. The other thing that we have is a tradition of pushing more towards a peace officer approach rather than a law enforcement approach. And although it is our city manager who hires and manages our police chief as well as other staff, as a city councilor, you do have persuasion in the direction or the tone of how police interact with citizens in your area or residents in your area. You can influence what their priorities are. For instance, in our city, marijuana possession, because it's illegal here, except for very small medical, marijuana possession is beyond low priority. They're just not going to spend time on it. That's just not going to happen. And so you can set the tone. And as for transparency, again, in that relationship building, work with your city manager, because your city manager directs, at least in my city, police as staff. And so a good relationship with your city manager is going to push that transparency quite a bit. We have had a couple situations, one where there was a shooting. It's pretty rare, but the residents here were willing to give us the benefit of the doubt, because number one, we got information out right away, and number two, we've been extremely transparent throughout our history since the 70s. So it's more about the culture rather than trying to put rules in place, as far as good relations between residents and police.
Cara, I have another question for you. Do you ever communicate anywhere how you're voting and why you're voting a certain way on subjects? Is that information that you make available for your constituents?
Absolutely. So I usually say why I'm voting a certain way at the city council meeting, which is live streamed, and those are archived. But also during the meeting, I have my Facebook going, and I put down what topic we're talking about, some key points that we're discussing, what my vote was, and then why I voted that way. Also, if residents have questions right during the meeting and they're not there, they're at home, they can ask on my Facebook, and I ask those questions and get answers for them right then. And
one last question for you. How much time did you dedicate to your political campaign?
Wow. Okay, so I dedicated every moment I wasn't sleeping, from May until election day, and I'm not kidding. I door knocked. I would do seniors during the day because they would be at home, so I segmented them out, and I would do other age groups in the evenings and weekends, and it was every day. It was brutal. I'm not gonna kid you on that. So if I wasn't fundraising, I was door knocking or some other direct voter contact, phone calling, speaking at an event. It was very long days.
Cara, thank you so much for your service to your constituents, as well as serving as an elected Libertarian while being a member of the LP National staff. If anyone is interested in contacting you, how can they reach you?
So you can reach me a couple different ways. So you can always hit me up on Facebook, easily searchable there. You can also get a hold of me. You can text me on my phone. My phone is public record, so my phone number is 612-735-4386. Please text, don't call though, because I have a lot of calls that I try to get through. Or you can email me, and that's my LP email. And the easiest way to email any of us on LP staff is to go to lp.org and just click on the staff button, and it takes you to all of us, and you can email right through any of us. Jess, me, Apollo, anyone. That's probably the easiest.
And any final remarks to an individual that is thinking about running for office as a Libertarian?
Talk to your spouse and your family first. And also understand what it's going to take to win. And are you really willing to do that? Are you really willing to put in that effort and time? And make an honest evaluation of that.
Okay, thank you so much, Cara. Have a wonderful evening. Up next, we're bringing on Apollo Pazell. Apollo currently serves as the Libertarian Party. He does double duty as well, the Libertarian Party's candidate specialist, as well, campaign specialist, as well as being an elected Libertarian in his hometown. So Apollo is actually on the road at the moment. He is helping to get campaigns geared up for the next cycle. So I'm going to bring on Apollo. Okay.
Okay, sorry,
Right.
I got it. Okay. Hello, everybody. I appreciate you guys being on this call. I'm parked on the side of the road in beautiful Riverton, Wyoming, with Libertarian hero Bethany Baldus. So yeah, when I got elected, it was mine was a little bit different. Mine was a lot of community engagement, less door knocking, which is ironic because I preach door knocking religiously. However, my town is significantly smaller. It's my family's been there for 6 generations, so mine was more about fostering the existing relationships than it was the door knocking. But I would not recommend that to most people. So mine was an anomaly. A lot of what I did was being incredibly informed on the issues. Copperton was joined into something called the Metro Services District, which is unique to Utah. It's actually unique even in Utah. It was the first time it had ever been tried, and it was a blended structure of a municipal council and then a combined municipal council with five other cities. I also serve as the board of director on the board of directors for Unified Police, which is the largest police department outside of our highway patrol in Utah. So it's the largest police department in the state of Utah outside of them. And I serve on the board for that, where I am the chair of the Benefits and Compensation Committee. What I've accomplished since I've been elected, I'm very proud of what I've accomplished. I've been on for almost 2 years now. And the first thing that I was able to accomplish is rearranging mass gathering permits so that if there was a protest in my very small town, it would be legal, or if there's any sort of other mass gathering, the permit requirement was waived. I also made it so it was possible to shut down streets with the consent of your neighbors, things like that. Those were early ones. I eliminated all business licenses. We eliminated business licenses completely. And what happened when we eliminated those business licenses, my town was on the verge of becoming a ghost town. There's no other way of saying it. And when we eliminated the business licenses from that 1 year point, we increased our businesses in town by 120%. Also that first year, I was able to cut the budget by it was very close to a quarter. And it was through, we were paying additional fees for surface and for surfacing roads that weren't in our district, our boundaries. So we were able to cut that. And that was the biggest portion, but it was also a matter of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Which was very helpful. On the board of directors for the Unified Police Department, there was a movement to remove body cameras. They used as a budgeting excuse to eliminate body cameras from the largest police department in the entire state. It is also the police department that has the most diverse communities. And in my capacity on that board, I organized the communities to come and put a stop to that so that there are still body cameras on the largest police force in Utah. Since then, I've also gotten 2 libertarians elected to the council. I'm working on a 4th, so we do have a majority libertarian council. And that's probably why I've been able to accomplish as much as I have. We have voted no. There has been 8 tax increases that have come before our city. They've come before all cities in Salt Lake County, and we're the only city to have voted against all of them with my leadership. And I think that is the basis. As far as campaigning, like I said, mine was an anomaly, but I work closely with a lot of candidates across the country, and of course, door knocking is the key. It is the major key. Having strong messaging, connecting with your voters, these are all important things. But it is also important to be very engaged in your community. Find something that your community does not do terribly well, and be the spearhead to fix that issue. And you will find very quickly that you will have a following in your town or your city that will be compounded and will very much help you in your election cycle. And with that, I'm free for questions. Jess.
Okay, Apollo, did you go over how much time you dedicated to running for office?
It was a significant amount of time. I was running against, so in Utah, the predominant religion is LDS. And I was running against the LDS bishop, or was from the LDS bishopric in in my town. So I was competing against a fairly hefty opponent. It was an at-large seat. There were 2 available seats. I came in first. He came in second. So it was a matter of, and I'm Catholic, so it was a matter of working very hard to get to know and engage members of the LDS community inside my town. Something that I had done. I mean, I always have known my neighbors who were LDS. That wasn't a problem, but really incorporating myself and my positions into the LDS framework was important. I started my campaign a year out, actually, becoming basically the policy expert on the new MSD. I mean, I know that law. It's SB 199, and it's about 250 pages, and I know every single word in that piece of legislation, and becoming an expert was a big key to that success. I would say weekly, I would probably say it was a full-time job, 40 hours plus a week, and that's even for a small town.
We've got a couple more questions that have came in. There's individuals watching that are running for office and similar type of races in city council. What was the biggest challenge that you faced while you were running, and what was the biggest challenge you faced once you got elected?
So the biggest challenges are, of course, going to be are going to be subjective to the area that you're in. My biggest challenge was the fact that I was Catholic in a predominantly LDS state. So that was easily my biggest challenge, and that's a matter of how I overcame that challenge. Like I said, is finding a way that my platform fit into the culture. The prevailing culture in that town. Another challenge is overcoming, and this is the small town. I saw the question at the bottom. You said you're running for a small town race as well. So good luck. The unique challenges with the small town race are, everybody. They all know you. People, that I'm knocking on doors knew my family as they were immigrating off, from Italy. So, I mean, there's a long, complicated history in small towns that really come to light in one of these races. I mean, if there's a feud between a family member from generations back, you've got some work to do. And so that was probably my biggest outside of the LDS faith. My biggest challenge was overcoming preconceptions of my family throughout the 6 generations that have lived in the community.
Apollo, a lot of people may be meeting you for the first time this evening. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do as Libertarian Party staff and some of your goals and hopes for the next election cycle?
I sure can. So last year, I'm the campaign specialist. I identify races nationwide, but primarily in districts that are low win numbers, that are affordable, competitive, have a number of factors. I identify those races. I recruit candidates in those races. I train them how to be candidates. I walk with them step by step from the very beginning of their campaign to the very end of their campaign. I laugh with them. I cry with them. I yell at them. And we make some successful campaigns. Our biggest success last year was, of course, Bethany Baldus out of Wyoming House District 55, that on the election night, Associated Press, New York Times declared Bethany Baldus the victor over 20-year incumbent David Miller, who was also the majority leader. Unfortunately, that number did not hold as absentee ballots broke, but we were able to come within 53 votes of succeeding in one of the biggest upsets in Wyoming political history, and one of the biggest upsets since the 1980s for the Libertarian Party. Going forward into 2020, we've already started our focus. We've identified around 30 races nationwide that we're going to be finding candidates for, and I'm also working directly with state chairs and state leadership in states that are geographically and population and cost similar to the areas that we focused on last year, so that we can replicate this on a larger scale. As states start to find their niche and start to find their successes, we'll incorporate them into the larger plan so that we have regions dedicated to homogenous populations, basically. Something else that we're working on is a summit that's coming up on August 31st and September 1st, where we'll be working for a regional plan to try to take the tactics that we used in 2018 and plan to be using in 2020, so that we can take them to a more replicable state, so that it's easier for people to do on their own time and in their own place.
Apollo, any last advice you would like to give to individuals that are either considering running for office themselves or getting involved in a campaign as a volunteer, helping out, maybe considering becoming campaign staff?
Yes. First of all, I'm going to answer the question. I saw a little pop-up down there that said, of those 30 races, are they partisan? Yes, my goal is partisan races. Currently, I also, if you're running a nonpartisan race, if you're running, I'll of course help you. I'm always available, and I'm ready to help you in your nonpartisan race as well. But yes, these races are primarily partisan. We're trying to find that success that has eluded us. I mean, we're doing wonderfully on the city level and in some county levels. I mean, Jeff Hewitt, that's an incredible success story. And so we are trying to find that partisan success that has eluded us so far. So primarily those 30 races are partisan. Now, last bit of advice that I would give to any candidate is know your limitations. Understand how much you need to commit to this to be able to be successful. First of all, understand that maybe you'll only have the time, the energy, and the resources to be able to run a state legislative campaign and not a governor's race. Understand that scaling up works. Getting a bench in your respective states of municipal candidates like us, like Cara, like Tessa, like all of these folks, it creates a voting record. It also creates a narrative that libertarians are successful at getting things done and can win. So my advice is A, know your limitations, B, be very involved, and be the smartest on policy. Make sure that you're the smartest person in the room, because that's our benefit.
Excellent advice, Apollo, and thank you so much for taking the time while you're on the campaign trail, literally, to join us this evening. We really appreciate all of your talent and everything you do for the party. How can individuals get in contact with you?
You can find me on Facebook fairly easily as well, and then my email address is apollo.pazell@lphq.org. And then my phone number is not publicly known. I'm going to be getting a new phone number soon, so just use those.
Thank you so much, Apollo. Enjoy your evening. Okay, next we're bringing on Cole Ebel. Cole is in Tennessee, and he's the former state chair of the Libertarian Party of Tennessee, as well as being an elected libertarian. Cole, all right, we'll hand the call off to you. What was the strategy that you used to get elected? And since you've become an elected official, what do you think you've been able to accomplish?
So and thanks, Jess. I appreciate you having me on. So the best strategy that I came up with was to knock on every single door that we have. Now I live in a smaller town, so that was definitely something that we could accomplish. But that was something I wanted to talk to every single person, no matter what their party affiliation was, no matter what their ideas were. I wanted to get in front of them and basically sell myself. That's what I was looking to do, and sell my ideas. Now, really above it all, you are trying to sell the idea. You're not necessarily trying to sell your person, but you're going to have to make that transformation to first get them to listen to you, then go on to it. Then as far as the second part of your question goes, I would say that there's a difference between accomplishing versus fighting things. There's several things we've been able to accomplish, but as Apollo was saying earlier, it's a little bit more difficult when you don't have other people with your ideals and principles on the city council with you versus those who do. And that's kind of a goal, is to get some more, again, that's why you push the idea, not the person. So some of the things we've been able, been able to accomplish is we've done a lot less spending. Sometimes you do a little give and take, and you let a couple of things go just so that you can get those major spending obstacles out of the way. I think we've been able to save quite a few $100,000 just by delaying the conversation, extending the conversation, just basically doing the politics 101 and making people question. Transparency has been huge in that. We have live streaming now at our city council meetings. So people speak differently when they know the entire public is watching them. And so they're not so apt to just throw something out there and throw something under the bus. They know everyone's watching them. So that helps. Transparency was my campaign slogan, transparency in government. So really been working on accomplishing that. And then more community involvement. That's another thing I've been able to help accomplish. We're getting dozens upon dozens of people just working together to get more involved, whether it's through the different public events to private events, just basically getting out there and saying they're identifying, oh, well, this is what's wrong with government. Okay, well, what do I do to fix it? And getting that involvement moves the idea forward.
Cole, what are the biggest challenges that you faced while you were running for office, and the biggest challenge you have faced as an elected libertarian?
I'd say the biggest challenge I faced running for office was I am not homegrown. When I first ran, everybody said, oh, there's no way you're going to get elected. You're going against the good old boy system. And I said, well, watch. I'll do it. Went out there. I had huge community support going against it, but it was also constantly like, he doesn't know, he doesn't understand this, he doesn't understand that, he's not from here. And it was basically finding those main people that were saying, yeah, we're tired of the good old boy system, and it's getting us nowhere. We're doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, and just showing people literally the definition of insanity. That was probably the biggest challenge. Then there's some smaller challenges that pop up. You know, you get different things like you're scheduling and you're mapping. You're trying to figure out what doors to knock on, who you're going to talk to, when you're going to do it. And then all of a sudden, bam, daylight savings hits and you're knocking on people's doors in the middle of the night, it seems like. And those are challenges, trying to basically schedule when you can talk and interact with people. And also what conversations to go ahead and have a little bit longer of, what conversations to avoid. Sometimes not fighting certain battles is winning the war.
Thank you so much. How much time did you dedicate to your campaign, and what kind of resources did you turn to help you? You were obviously successful and you won. Did you have other individuals helping you? Did you get support from the state party? What were those factors that helped lead to your success, besides knocking on every individual door?
Honestly, what I wanted to do was almost work a test case for the state party, just to see what does it take to get elected. The first thing I said I would do is I would say, I'm going to throw $1,000 of my own money into this. So I threw $1,000 in. Then I also said I'm going to dedicate 15 hours a week, which is three hours a day after work, 5 days a week. And I figured that was something that would be attainable for any given individual. They could go out there and say, okay, I can do that. I can find $1,000 of my own money, and then I can give 15 hours a week for a given period of time. And those were the two main things that I did. Now, as far as getting past that on funding, all I did was ask. I just asked people. I said, hey, can you help me out? You'd be surprised just asking the amount of money that people will they'll donate, especially if you've got some action backing you, where people have seen, hey, Cole will get a result here. I don't feel like I'm wasting my money. And so just ask. If you don't ask, you're not going to get any money. Make sure you're asking. The other thing is I kind of worked a strategy that said I basically was looking for the vote count that I was wanting to get. And I put $5 per vote. That's kind of my budgeting method. And however many votes that I needed to get, I multiply that by 5. And that was kind of the strategy. It worked great. I got the highest vote count out of 6 candidates. And again, all the other 5 were lived here their entire lives. I was a new guy. So it was just something that worked really well, just getting that message of you. It's just a general message that I think everyone can mostly agree with, that you're better at running your life than I am. And that's what I ran on.
Here's a really good question from Mike. He said, aside from door knocking, how did you find was the best way to connect with business owners, the board and commission members, etc.?
So I'm kind of in a unique situation where I have the only liquor by the drink tavern in town. It's first one open since Prohibition. And I am constantly engaged in the community. I'm constantly talking with people. I'm constantly going back and forth, networking between businesses. We got other restaurants trying to open up down here. I'm trying to help them out. We're trying to have a nice pro-capitalist system down here, and just pointing out that basically I was able to use a lot of the kind of what Apollo was saying earlier. I was able to use a lot of the failed government policies of bad building regulations to get the business community on board. bad code enforcement. And when I say code enforcement, it's like picking and choosing, oh, well, we don't like this, so we're going to use our power here to stop this for this specific person, but for our family, we're okay with that. Working on that aspect. But those are probably the answers I'd give on that one.
Last question. How did it feel when you won on election night?
Well, election night was actually my birthday. I got up at like 4 a.m. that day. I went out across the entire city, put my strategic signs up, just popped them everywhere they were. I had several signs in everyone's yards everywhere. So it was just, it was Cole Ebel everywhere. Got out there and I held signs in the air, waving them around for like 12 hours, and then just sat outside the polling station and got the results. And I was like, hell yeah. And just drove on down to the tavern. We packed it out, filled it up, had some beers, and it felt great. And it was just immediately next day, it was that was another thing, to bring up too. Pick up your signs right away the next day. Start diving in. I went to an MTAS training within a week. I was in an MTAS training, figuring it out, and just dove in, writing articles, got a website going. You can check it out, coleebel.com. It's pretty simple. And we'd write about it. Now I've backed off a lot on the writing. I do need to pick it back up again. But yeah, that's been a lot of it was an exciting night.
Okay. Any last words for individuals that are considering running for office, and how can you be contacted?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could give some advice to everyone who's listening, run for an attainable position. Don't go for the biggest thing. Don't go for a popularity contest. We're libertarians. We need to be selling our ideas. We don't need to be selling ourselves. We're going to have to sell ourselves a little bit at the very get-go, but we need to be selling the idea, because something can happen to us, but the idea can live on forever. And so go for that attainable position. Go for that city council position, that county commission position. Do what Apollo does. Start building up more and more people in there. Like what Cara was saying, build more and more people inside that council. And then you can actually start changing laws like Apollo did. 25. I cannot imagine if I had a few more people in there, do a 25% budget decrease. That is rocking. Like that is phenomenal. Get more involvement, get more people to be involved. You might not even be the best person to run and be the face, but you could be definitely the backup who can support that person. Find a way though to go after something attainable. We waste way too much time, way too much money on these unattainable races that most of the time I find out it's just someone trying to win a Facebook popularity contest. And you know what? It just don't matter at the end. At the end of the day, what matters is things that Apollo's doing, things that Cara's doing, things that I've been able to do out here and getting these things. But it's not that we're doing it. We're doing it with the community's support. And that support is it's nonpartisan support. These are Republicans and Democrats that voted for us. They're not libertarians, and they're now coming to become libertarians.
Okay, thank you, Cole. And how can individuals get in contact with you?
You can email me at coleebelcitycouncil@gmail.com. That's coleebelcitycouncil@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks. I'm going to circle back to something we talked about when we opened this webinar, since many people have jumped in. You've heard some stories from individuals that have ran for office and won. The reason why the Libertarian Party is around today is because people have been supporting the LP's efforts for decades and for years. So the Libertarian Party was founded in 1971. We always have a lot of work to do, a lot of growth to do. And the way that we are supported is by our members. So if you have never joined the Libertarian Party as a member, or if your membership has lapsed, I invite you to renew your membership or to join us. With a $25 a year donation, you can become a basic member of the Libertarian Party. And you'll get a gift with your membership when you go to lp.org/jointhelp. So I do invite everyone that's watching to support the Libertarian Party's work, so that way we can elect more people to public office at not only the local level, but the state and federal levels as well. All right, so next we're going to bring on my friend, Jim Turney. Jim Turney has a lot of history with the Libertarian Party, and we do have 15 minutes left. A couple of our elected libertarians were not able to join us, so With Jim, we do have some extra time. So Jim, I'm going to bring you on now.
Right, let me see. Am I here? Can you hear me? Hi, Jess.
I can hear you. Hi. All right, Jim,
Hi.
can you give us a little bit of background on who is Jim Turney? What is your history with the Libertarian Party before you get into your strategy to get elected and what you have done since you have become elected to public office?
Well, I guess if you ask about history, the notable thing this month, in about 2 weeks, there is a 50th anniversary of a watershed moment in the history of the modern libertarian movement. Some people say it was the beginning of the modern libertarian movement, and that was the Young Americans for Freedom National Convention in St. Louis in, I guess it was Labor Day weekend of 1969, that great summer of 69. And I went there, and a lot of other libertarians were there, and we ended up walking out and separating from Young Americans for Freedom and sort of kicking off the modern libertarian movement that ultimately became several organizations, including the founding of the Libertarian Party about 2 years later. And then we started growing pretty fast at first, it seems. And I helped found and start the Libertarian Party of Virginia, which is where I was living at the time. And I ultimately became the national chair of the party in '85 and won re-election, I'm proud to say, and at our convention where Ron Paul was nominated as our presidential candidate. So that was pretty exciting. And Russell Means was the other option, and he was a great candidate too, I thought. So we had a really exciting time. The party has changed a lot since then. In some respects, it was historic time, but I won't go into that anymore. But you asked for history, so that's a touch of that. I've lived in Europe for a while, and family has always lived here in Altamonte Springs, or at least since 1969. So been around here a lot, and I came back about 4 or 5 years ago and did exactly what you've heard some of these other great libertarian elected officials do. I started looking around to see what office I could run for that would work. And I wanted to run in as local and winnable of kind of a campaign as I could find. And I was very lucky. Turns out that I was eligible for the city commission, as we call it here, same as a city council, for Altamonte Springs. And that was an election that I won in 2017. It's a 2-year term, so I'm up for re-election again right now. And at the moment, I don't have an opponent. There's 3 weeks left for an opponent to show up. So I'm expecting one. In any case, I'm doing the wise thing of preparing as if I had one. And that's what I did 2 years ago. I found that there was an incumbent who had been sitting there for a long time with no opponent. And so he wasn't used to campaigning, and he was not as well known as he perhaps could have been. He was just sitting there. And I decided my strategy would be to, instead of starting early, I decided to do the opposite. I decided to go ahead and build my campaign and do all the preparations and wait until the last possible moment to announce and qualify and start the campaign. So that's what I did. In all the planning that I did with local libertarians here, we never expected what happened. We were surprised and even shocked on the last day of the qualifying period. The other candidate withdrew. So I ended up winning without actually having to do the hard work of campaigning. So I put a lot of time in it, and a lot of planning, but in true campaigning, I did not have to do that. So I'm lucky to serve on a city commission. Everyone knows I'm a libertarian, but it is a nonpartisan office here. And it's an especially interesting city culture, especially on the city commission. We're a city manager strong government. We have a good manager, and he has kept us out of debt, and the commission even before me. So we have zero debt, and we do things very responsibly here. And there's not much controversy that comes to the city commission. So there haven't been too many chances over the last year and a half for me to champion some new, let's say, libertarian initiative, but everyone knows I'm a libertarian, and it's even on my bio, my history that I've already told you about a little bit on the city website. So I get out a lot, and by the way, I'm a very strong believer in the canvassing or door-to-door meeting the voters, and it's easier to do when you're actually elected and not in the middle of a campaign. It's easier to go to someone's door, introduce yourself as their representative at the city level, and ask their opinion. But as Cara said, you really want to let them do the talking, let them tell you what they think the issues are, and that builds relationships. To people who are thinking about running for office, I would strongly advise that you right now start visiting around the various civic groups in your community, and the one or two that you like and feel most comfortable with, join them. You don't have to devote yourself to them, but at least show up for some meetings and get to know the people that are in that group. Go down to your city and your county and ask what it takes to be appointed to a citizens board, and or sometimes they're called advisory boards, and they're usually appointed, the members are appointed by elected officials. Usually there's a form that you need to fill out that just asks some basic details. Maybe you need to get to know your council or city commissioner or whatever to increase your chances. But if you can start learning the people, building relationships in your community, building relationships in the local government as well, especially with the local government, the idea is to learn the process. It's obviously always good to build relationships. In fact, here in Florida, it's especially important to try to build the relationships with people you're going to serve with if you're elected before you get elected, because once you're elected, it's illegal for you to communicate with them about anything that even might become a subject of conversation or vote in a meeting. So you're strictly limited into what kind of discussions you can have, other than, of course, in a called meeting of the commission or council. So you build a relationship before you get elected is the best way. And as Cara said, you need to get to know the staff and how they work, make friends there as well. The city staff or your county staff is very important to success. Obviously, if you can get more libertarians elected, I have not been able to do that here, but that is a very important thing, because you're obviously going to have to get cooperation with others to be able to make changes. In this case, in the case of most cities that have a city manager, strong government, it helps to get the city manager on your side for anything, because he can be a powerful force, he or she, against whatever initiative you're trying to change. So maybe I'll get reelected without the shot being fired, but if you've been hearing booms behind me, that's not the Battle of Altamonte going on. That's a thunderstorm we've got overhead. It's our traditional late summer afternoon thunderstorm in Florida here. So I'm open for questions.
Okay, Jim, I have a question for you. You had already described your strategy, which was to find a local attainable race, and you found a race in which there was an incumbent that hadn't been challenged in many election cycles. You mentioned that the incumbent decided to drop out of the race. what was your reaction when you had started gathering resources to help you campaign, to then find out that you didn't even actually need to campaign because you'd be the only person on the ballot?
Well, the opponent's reaction was rather shock, and I, not necessarily expecting that he might even consider withdrawing. I didn't plan this, but the way we did it was effective, and now it is part of a plan. When I went in to file and qualify, I went in with 2 other Libertarian friends, one my campaign manager and one my campaign treasurer, who are both very professional people. And so it was kind of an awesome team that showed up to City Hall for my filing and qualifying. And that word, I think, got to this guy, and I think he just said, "I'm not up for this." So it was, he was obviously shocked, and withdrew his campaign to our surprise. I've heard since that there might have been some health issues as well going on there, and so maybe that affected his decision a little bit, but it obviously wasn't enough of a health problem that he decided not to run again. So I was lucky, and I don't know that I finished the thought, but the fact that it was an odd year, this year's an odd year, so it was 2017, it meant that the voter turnout's a lot lower. So when you're targeting your voters for doing canvassing and other activities, mailings and so forth, you have an easier job of it because there are fewer people that are likely to vote. So you can target just the likely voters. I think it was Cara that made the correct point that you really need to be sure to focus your attention on the people who are likely to vote, or that you're likely to be able to motivate to go vote. If you're talking to other people, you're not recruiting votes, you're not earning votes. So you need to focus your attention on those who actually will bother to go vote. So it's easier in an off year. So I would guess that if anybody listening to this is thinking of running for office and they can find an office that is the elections in an off year, that's a strong candidate for your consideration to run for that office.
Jim, did you have to make any kind of sacrifices or modifications to your life while serving as an elected official?
Yeah, that I have. I love traveling. I've traveled a lot all my life, and I like to take road trips, especially, and foreign trips, and spent a lot of time abroad, and all that changes. I have had my wings clipped, but it's not been without reward. It's an honor to serve, and I spend a lot of time going to events in my community. And so I want to hit that point again. If you're thinking about running, you need to be out there and do things in your community. Watch the community calendars for civic organizations in the city and the Chamber of Commerce and all those sorts of things, and start participating, because if you're not comfortable doing that, you're probably not going to be comfortable when you get elected. And I enjoy it. So I've traded one enjoyment of my life, which was travel, for another enjoyment, which is socializing with people and making new friends. And so I'm really out there much more than anyone else on my city commission. I'm very public and visible in the public. And I hear comments and compliments about that all the time. So I think that will be an asset to getting reelected.
Were you able to secure any endorsements during your first time around? And if not, are you looking to secure endorsements for your second run for city council?
I did not try for endorsements because there was a plan for many things that didn't end up having to happen, since I ended up sort of winning by surprise. So one of the things was endorsements that, and I don't know how successful that would have been at that point in time anyway, but this time the plan is, of course, to go for endorsements, and then now have many friends in elective office. They are usually Democrats and Republicans, and I get along with people in both parties very well. So even though they know where I stand, I guess they like me, or at least we've become friendly. And so that I hear a lot of positive feedback about that. And I do expect to get endorsements. I haven't asked for any at this point because I don't have an opponent. And some of these things are politically sensitive. And that's one thing I would encourage also libertarians. That's why you need to get out in the community and be part of these civic organizations and be part of these citizens advisory boards, because it's a lot different than being on Facebook. You will find that you start learning what kind of sensitivities there are about things. So if you go ask another elected official for an endorsement and you don't even have an opponent, that might work in some cases, but you are putting them a little bit in an awkward position, because it's like, well, who's gonna, if somebody does pop up, is it gonna be somebody who, you know, I need to have considered, and I can be accused of not considering them, even though I didn't know they were gonna run. I jumped the gun. So you have to think about those kind of things. So I've talked to some of my friends, and that's the kind of feedback I get. It's like, let's wait and see. If you get an opponent, you've got my endorsement. And they would rather, they'd rather be quiet until then, usually.
Okay, so Jim, we've gotten some questions about the history of the party. You mentioned the party has changed significantly since you first were involved. And one of the conversations you and I have had over the past was when you were chair from 85 to 88, communication was much different than it is today. You had to do pay to make phone calls long distance, and also do a lot more voting by mail. What are some other ways that you have seen the party change from over the years?
Well, the one that you just hit on, communication, is so dramatic. Everyone probably realizes that the internet wasn't around in the 1980s. And in those days, phone calls were very expensive, as you alluded to. And so it was pretty tough to communicate. And so the party it was complex for the party to communicate with its members, and it was complex for me even to communicate with people on the LNC. We also had a larger LNC at the time. I think it was, if I recall correctly, 33 members. So it was pretty big. And then, of course, there were alternates as well. So it's a big LNC, and fortunately it got reduced in size. But the party membership was smaller. When I became, I don't want to get into this too much, but when I became chair in 85, the party was at a really low point in membership. It was deeply in debt. We had most people might not realize it, but if you look back in our history, you'll see that we had a huge split in 1983, and that really affected the party over the next 2 years. And we lost a lot of members and a lot of infrastructure, and ran up huge debt. So I'm proud of the fact that I was able to get that debt paid off in my first term. That was really hard, as well as get the other things functioning, like our communication with our members, which was through our LP News. And I was fortunately able to get Carl Hess, of all people, to a real champion, a libertarian. If anybody doesn't know who that is, they ought to look him up and learn about him. But he became the editor of LP News. And and I moved the party from Houston. It was headquartered. The headquarters had been moved to Houston, of all places, in a nondescript location. And we were out of touch there. And so I moved it back to Washington, D.C. So those are the things that come to my mind to answer your question.
Okay, just a few more questions before we wrap up. So you've been involved with a number of campaigns over the years. What is the best advice that you have for libertarians that are interested in getting involved with political campaigns but are not ready to run for office themselves yet?
You know, it's really a lot like getting ready to run for office. I would double down on my advice to go out and find out all the civic organizations in your community and start. They love to have visitors come to their meetings. Sometimes you need to let them know in advance, depending on the organization, but start mingling in the civic organizations, because a lot of the most community-minded people in any community are in these civic organizations. And around here, Rotary is the big one that's the most attractive, I think, for this purpose. It may not be in your community, but go around and visit a bunch of them. And around here, there's even multiple Rotary clubs to choose from. Start getting involved in those. In the Chamber of Commerce, for example, Lions Club. There's a lot of things. Start showing up. Showing up is a lot of it, and you get to know people. And as they say, politics is about relationships, and you need to build relationships in your community. And if you do that, you'll be a much more effective person helping a candidate, because you'll have people to introduce them to, and you will sort of have your own better sense of how things run in your community, and be able to advise the candidate or assist them and have a better sense of what works and what doesn't. So all the things that make a good candidate also make a good campaign staff person. Now, everybody is not the kind that's willing to get out in the community, so and meet people and do things like that. So then I would suggest training. There are several, including the Libertarian Party has training, and so does Leadership Institute and Libertarian Leadership. Those kind of organizations provide training and running campaigns, and so learn how it's done, learn how to be effective. And if you do that, you will be able to be an effective volunteer to help somebody else get elected.
So to everyone that is watching the video, the live stream right now, my name is Jess Mears. I'm the Libertarian Party's membership manager, and I host these webinars about every 3 to 4 weeks. If there are topics you're interested in learning more about, please do drop it in the comments. I will check those and take your suggestions when coming up with future webinar topics. And Jim, since you've been doing this even longer than I have, will you please do my job and share with our audience why it's so important to join the Libertarian Party as a dues-paying member?
Certainly. Well, thanks for not telling me you were going to ask that so that I'm fresh. But I think that it's so important because it's a way to be on the record about your support for the Libertarian Party. And you're carrying, you know, the Libertarian Party membership dues are not so high that you're paying your share of the weight for communicating with you. And there's some non-sexy things that the Libertarian Party has to do. We have to have a staff. We have to have great people like Jess and Cara and Apollo and Dan, and there's others. I won't name everybody, I guess, but all the ones on this call anyway. And we need to have these people working, you know, at the national level. We are not wasting a lot of money. We have bought our own building, for example. All of these infrastructure costs and making the national party work, and even your state party, need to be paid for. So it's very modest to join the LP, but you're able to carry that card that's on the screen right now, the We the People card, proudly. So you can be a card carrying member and be proud of that, and support the Libertarian Party. And it matters. It matters in the numbers, that just like the numbers on the screen, 177 elected Libertarians. It also helps to say how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are actually dues paying members of the party. And don't forget about your local affiliate and your state affiliate. It's not just the national party. You really need to be spending a little bit of money and a little bit of time at every level. And it's all part of making a successful organization and infrastructure, and that's what we need to be able to get people elected. And that's the point, isn't it? Candidates. Let's stay focused on candidates and campaigns at all levels of the party.
You made the pitch better than I could, Jim, so thank you so much. Again, if you're interested in becoming a dues-paying member of the Libertarian Party, please go to lp.org/join-the-LP, and you'll get a gift with your membership when you do go through that link. Thank you, everyone, so much, and thank you to our elected libertarians. Our goal, as Jim mentioned, is to make more people elected libertarians, and we can do that with your support, but we also need you to step up and run for office, or to step up and help a candidate run for office. So if you're interested in running yourself, please go to lp.org/run. You will get an auto-generated email from Cara Schulz. Cara is one of our elected libertarians, so also serves as a staff member. She will reach out to you and help you get started running for office. Thank you, everyone, for spending your Sunday evening with us. If you would like to be alerted to future webinars, please go to lp.org and sign up for our email subscription, and we will get you on the list to get notifications about future webinars. We'll do different topics in the future featuring additional elected libertarians, as well as libertarian candidates and issues. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening.